The Chorus Ensemble is a set of 3 modulation tools that allow us to thicken out a sound, we can soften down a sound, or we can just change the sound completely. We have 3 modes: Classic, which is a nice thickening, widening sound, the Ensemble, which is a rich, full-bodied chorus, and the Vibrato, which is a pitch modulation. I'm going to stick with Classic to start and show you the features, and let's get a nice loop going so we have something to work with. So what's happening in Classic mode is the input signal is getting duplicated twice. We're getting 2 copies of the original, and each copy is shifted by a certain amount of time. We can use the LFO to then modulate the delay time of those 2 signals. So the LFO being a low frequency oscillator, it's attached to the delay time and we can get it moving around by itself. It gives the sound more body and presence. That's because the duplicate copies, with the time being shifted, expanding and contracting, it's slightly modulating the pitch as well. We're getting higher and lower pitch. When they're stacked back together, we get this feeling like there's multiple copies of the input happening. I can bring the rate up to make it faster. If I bring the amount up and the rate right up, you can really hear those oscillations happening now. So just by moving the rate and the amount, you can find a really nice sweet spot to get the sound nice and warm and wholesome. Now moving across, we have the feedback. This is how much of the output signal is fed back into the original, so it kind of gives the impression that you're stacking multiple copies. Let's bring the rate right up. So at extreme levels, we're getting an artificial metallic type sound. We can also make the feedback sound a bit more hollow by clicking on the invert polarity button. Now, one thing you might have noticed is we were going into the red then, we were getting some clipping, and that's not what we want. So over here we have the high pass filter. What this does is when you turn it on and bring the frequency up, anything below this frequency is going to be cut. Now if I bring all this up, it's still going to sound chaotic, but we're not going to get that muddiness and that distortion that we had before. I'm going to go ahead and play this vocal loop here. So very simple, it just sounds like one voice, but I'm going to move across to the ensemble mode now, and what you'll notice is as I bring the amount up, we have a 3rd copy. They're evenly split, which gives us that kind of really full sound. So if I bring the amount up and bring the rate up, it sounds like we've got multiple people in the room now. This might be a little bit too much. Let's bring it down a bit. Now, the one thing I didn't mention is the width. So both Classic and Ensemble have a width. What this does is it splits the individual copies out to the left and the right in the spatial field. I can bring this down to 0 and we just now have a mono chorus. But I can bring this all the way up to 200% to get a full extreme spatial effect. Let's try it with something else. I'm going to try the saw lead here. Okay, I'm going to move across to the dry wet. The dry wet is how much of the processed signal is mixed with the unprocessed signal. If I bring this down to 0, we've just got our pure saw wave. And I'm going to bring the feedback up and the rate up and do some crazy stuff. And I'm just going to bring a little bit of dry wet in. So we can mix and match how we like with that. The other 2 parameters we have here, which are universal, is the output. This is just the volume of the device, and we have the warmth. So the warmth adds a distortion, a saturation at the end of the processing, just to give it that little bit of extra warmth. It's quite subtle, but it's a really neat little feature there. And finally, let's move across to vibrato mode. I'm going to bring the amount down here. I'm going to click on vibrato. First thing you might notice is the feedback and the dry wet are disabled, so we can't use these in vibrato mode. Let's go back to that vocal hold. So as I bring the amount up, the vibrato simply just modulates the pitch up and down. We can change it faster, or we can slow it down. This is really useful if I want to humanize something, so I'll give it quite a fast rate, but bring the amount right down. And now we have a vibrato, we've got a modulation of the pitch. It also works quite well with leads. So what would normally just be a straight lead, we now have a little bit of wobble. The other features that we have for the vibrato is we have the high pass like we did for the classic and the ensemble, but we have an offset. So this will split the LFO into two. One side will be going out of phase with the other. So that's again to give us that spatial effect. And this goes all the way up to 180 degrees for a full, complete opposite on the left and the right hand side. The final feature we have is the shape. Now I'm going to slow this down a bit, bring the amount up. So the LFO is moving in a nice smooth sine wave. It changes this to a triangle. We can see now we have sharp edges. It's going up and then immediately back down and then straight up and immediately back down again. These points make the sound sharper and edgier.